as a student and as a person who's entering the work environment, I'm slowly learning the differences in the roles and the spaces which the government, the civil society, and the private sector occupy in society. And in their activity, I'm realizing that they have different duties towards society. But I also feel that there is a tendency of each sector to enter in the sphere of the other,
Yeah.
and also sometimes make the work redundant.
Hmm.
How do you think we can bring about better collaboration
Hmm.
in these three sectors? A collaboration which enables a more just and a more intelligent
Hmm.
society.
Hmm. I would say instead of using the word collaboration, uh, it's better to use the word inclusive, where we are trying to have an inclusive society which includes everyone. The word essentially means that everything is one, whether it is civil society or it is the private sector or the government. It's an inclusive development of an inclusive society. You can't segregate any one part of the society and say that they have a very distinct role and it has nothing to do with the society as such. Because ultimately we are looking at the human well-being, whether it is a private sector factory or a private sector corporation or a public sector undertaking or a government organization or a local body. All these institutions are serving the core purpose of achieving human well-being. And when you look at this ultimate objective, that it is human well-being, there's no reason, and it is essential that they collaborate with each other and they create a synergy between each other. The government cannot work without the civil societies, voluntary agencies. Government is very good in policy formulation, government is very good in planning, government is very good in providing finances. But when it comes to implementing at the ground level, in the villages, in the towns, after all, whatever policy you formulate sitting in your headquarters, ultimately it has to unfold, blossom in the field, on the ground. And therefore it is useful for government to always collaborate with civil societies who are working at the grassroots level with the people, so that what the government cannot do can be done by the civil societies. The civil societies by their very nature are flexible, small, and they can work with the people at more close quarters. And ultimately, just by framing policies, things will not happen. People have to get involved in the work, and therefore it is necessary that governments collaborate with involved civil societies, voluntary agencies in their policy formulation and implementation, so that it is practical and it is result oriented. Corporates, private sectors also cannot see themselves as different or excluded from this process, because they also have to serve the society ultimately, and therefore need to play a role in the society's development. That's why you have now more and more corporates giving social service much beyond their business operations. So unless all these three agencies collaborate with each other, the human well-being will not be comprehensively addressed.
You are a person who worked in the government sector, and you chose to also come to the civil society for a period of your life. Why did you take such a decision?
Well, it's been the most wonderful decision I've taken, because I thought it's time to get back to the society and get a reality check of what we are doing as government officers. After some time in the government, one realizes that you are a little out of touch with reality, and it's necessary to go back to the roots and learn a lot of things and unlearn a lot of things. When you are in touch with people, you're actually able to see their conditions and realities, and your policy formulations gets much more realistic. This is one of the reasons I have chosen to serve in a civil society and also bring in my experience as a government official in the implementation of the programs of the civil society. Another important reason of choosing to work with the civil society is to fill this gap that what we cannot achieve in the government can be achieved in a civil society. And when a government official is coming in and working in a civil society, that gap is filled. That's why I chose to come and work with a civil society like Isha Foundation.
From the little experience I've had, I also believe that it's very important for people to change sectors so that they can learn from the other sector and bring back their experience to the sector they were more involved in. I'm not yet able to give a reasoning for that. Still, I believe it is so. If you can help me in my understanding of why do you think it's important for people involved in these different sectors to gain experience, and how can we make this system flexible enough to allow people to do that?
Yeah, this flexibility is a very important thing we need to maintain in whatever we do. So after a period of time, we tend to be inflexible. We tend to get rigid in our way of working, and we tend to assume we know things, and we have lost touch with the reality. So whichever sector one is working with, whether it is the private sector or the government or a voluntary agency, they need to know the roles of the other agency. They need to spend time with the other agency. They need to get involved deeply with the other agency. And what better way than to actually spend time in working with them? When you work with them, you actually learn the perspective of the other agency, and you are able to bring back that experience in your own working. It is not it's a very, very practical thing, and the most effective way of maximizing your output, your delivery in your area of work, by actually knowing your target audience, actually knowing your target sector in depth by being with them. And I see this as a most practical way of, very effective way of functioning. Which is why I would always recommend that all organizations need to maintain this flexibility of having to work with each other's sector.
So do you think systems are not yet capable and are not yet so flexible? In fact, I was very surprised when I came to know that the government of India has such a flexibility. So do you think that we should ask institutions, whether civil society, government and private sector, to allow people to work in this ambience and then come back to them?
Yes, it should be built as part of the system itself in their organizations, that a person gets to spend a certain period of time in a sector with which he is connected. Like if I am an IT computer company which is giving solutions to, let's say, a municipal body, this person should actually spend some time with the municipal body and understand how the whole thing works, so that whatever he designs as system has a reality component more closer to reality than it is. So it's practically very important, and the organizations should have a flexibility, a system to provide this kind of a facility for their staff to work with this kind of organizations, the other organizations I'm talking about. So it's not only practically useful, both ways it benefits, that he also gives his experience to that sector where he's working, and he gains in turn greater experience and brings it back in his area of working.
In the documentary and the stories we've been covering around the world, we've seen there's some kind of linkage between people inclined towards spirituality, or who are in search of spirituality, with people, with same people have a link with a desire to have to work in the development sector, to have a more inclusive development of people. Why do you think there is this linkage between a spiritual search and growth and the desire of having a more just and equal economic and social society?
So spirituality is the ultimate sense of inclusiveness. When you're able to understand, not just understand but also feel in every cell of your body that what you are and what everything else we know as life is one and the same, that's inclusiveness. That is ultimate inclusiveness, and that's the when you are able to feel that, we say you are spiritual. You are on the path of spirituality. And for a person who wants to be like that, in that path, it's but natural that he would want to spend maximum time with lives, people in all forms, whether it is people or animals or plants or everything that we know as life is what is the universe. And therefore to know that in depth, to understand the reality behind that universe. If you have understood one life form, they say that we have understood the entire universe. So therefore one would want to spend greater time and more focused time, more time in depth in understanding that nature of life, which is why a spiritual person would like to spend a lot of time studying in depth and being in depth with that kind of a life form and understand the nature of life, and that way he grows spiritually. Which is why seeking spirituality, being on the spiritual path and being in the development sector, working with the people serves each other's purpose. It's beneficial for both ways.
You're talking about spirituality, development, and since we are in school, also education. Last time I met you, I really liked the idea of personal growth can really come when we enable and think about mutual growth. Could you elaborate a little bit that thought again, if you can relate it to development and spirituality, or whatever sector you wish to, if we can bring about that thought?
See, in every sense, we're always striving for personal growth, in the sense that how as a person I can attain to the maximum of my potential. And in that pursuit, you may be doing different things. You may be having different occupation, but irrespective of what you're actually doing, your ultimate aim is to have that kind of a potential, maximize your potential and grow in that direction. So if you look at what kind of activity will give you that maximum potential, it is this thing that we call as spirituality, that you are always trying to maximize your potential. And irrespective of what you are doing, it doesn't matter what you are doing, how you do it is what is more important. How you perform that activity, with what kind of a devotion, with what kind of a focus, with what kind of a involvement you perform those activities is what decides whether you are spiritual about it or non-spiritual about it. Ultimately, they say that existentially, how much you are involved with life is all that matters. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are or what you are doing. You may be the Prime Minister, you may be the clerk in a government office, or you may be a farmer or whatever. Ultimately, existentially, how involved you are in the life process is what is going to determine the quality of life. And your growth in that sense is also determined by that. And therefore, showing that involvement in whatever you do is what we call as spirituality. This, in a sense, also lays down the path for your own development. And therefore, it's not about what you do or what you don't do, but how you do is the most important thing.